Polaroid, which dominated the instant photography market, decided to enter the home movie market in 1977. This market had been dominated by their competitor, Kodak, with their Super 8 film. The Polaroid Polavision was designed to use a cartridge that could be exposed and developed in just minutes. The images could then be viewed on a special tabletop viewer. The only problem was, Polavision was a flop. It never became as popular as their film cameras. You had to shoot in very bright light, colors were flat and muddy, and they couldn't record sound. This became Polaroid's first commercial failure, and they ceased production in 1979. Today, you can find these cameras on eBay anywhere from $25 to $100. Instant home movies with no sound and muddy colors? Sounds like a perfect recipe for a nap. The Sansui quadrophonic sound was a 4-channel home audio system, completely different from the 2-speaker system people had. Sansui was the first electronics maker to sell the quadrophonic amplifier for the home market in 1972. Record companies loved the idea, and some of the biggest names like Aerosmith, Eric Clapton, and the Eagles released albums for 4-channel stereos. But many consumers couldn't justify buying a new receiver for 2 additional speakers. And the concept ended in 1978. 4 speakers to blast disco in your living room? Your neighbors must have loved that. The Laserdisc was essentially a predecessor to the DVD. It was introduced in 1978 and offered consumers higher picture quality and sound than VHS tapes. However, they seemed to have more drawbacks than benefits. One of the biggest was the fact that you couldn't record on them. They were also pretty expensive. They hung on for a little while and then tried to make a comeback in the 1990s, but they ultimately failed for good when the DVD came on strong. The Laserdisc, a movie lover's very fancy frisbee. Betamax was introduced by Sony in 1975, 1 year before JVC introduced the VHS tape. Betamax had superior resolution and sound quality, which was why it remained a choice of different media outlets for decades. The problem was that Sony refrained from licensing its technology to other manufacturers, which limited the variety of movies that were available on this format. Meanwhile, JVC licensed its VHS technology to any manufacturer that was interested. Betamax's share of the VCR market fell from 100% in 1975 to 10% by 1988, and it continued to dwindle. Betamax, the king of quality who forgot to invite anyone to the party. In 1974, the baby food giant Gerber came up with a new idea. Why not create baby food for adults? They believed there would be a market for this. And they couldn't be more wrong. Adults were never fond of the mushy meat and food, and Gerber singles failed horribly. Because nothing says sophisticated adult meal like strained peas in a tiny jar. The swing bike was a bicycle that allowed the rider to steer the front wheel and the rear wheel. The design was patented in 1974 and sold on the market in 1975. They really weren't meant for transportation, as much as they were for looking cool and doing stunts. The bike was somewhat difficult to steer, which meant it was easier to fall and get hurt. It was discontinued in 1978. The swing bike. Because who needs stable steering when you can look cool zigzagging into a bush? Sauna hot pants were inflatable wonders designed to melt away fat from problem areas. Instead of eating right and exercising, you could just wear these while watching television in your recliner and eating your favorite cookies. There were several different brands, but they were all big failures. The dream of effortless weight loss. Inflatable edition. Just add sweat and wishful thinking. Not all of the strange products were commercial flops. Some were just accepted as normal, even though today they're unthinkable. In the 1970s, it wasn't uncommon to find a cigarette vending machine in a public place, sometimes even in restaurants or bowling alleys. You'd drop in a few coins, pull a lever, and a pack of cigarettes would drop out. No one was carded. It was a sign of a very different time. Another item that was once considered a normal part of life, but is now a symbol of corporate negligence, was the Ford Pinto. Introduced in 1971, the Pinto was a huge commercial success at first. However, it was later discovered that the gas tank could rupture and explode in a low-speed rear-end collision. Ford management was aware of the design flaw, but decided it was cheaper to pay off lawsuits than to fix the problem. The scandal rocked the automotive world, and the Pinto became a symbol of corporate greed and a tragic design failure. It was a vivid reminder that some commercial successes are actually moral failures. The Bell Picturephone, a prototype telephone, was first showcased at the 1964 World's Fair. A few of these were operational throughout the 1960s. In 1970, Bell introduced its first commercial picture phone, but the service never really caught on. They charged $160 per month for the equipment and the service, plus a fee per minute on calls. That would be at least $1,200 per month in today's money, and that's if you never used it. The other downside of this piece of technology was that it was only intended to be used for person-to-person calls, and not full rooms of people like you might see on Skype. They tried to expand the service, and even came out with a Model 2, but ultimately, they pulled the plug in 1972. For that price, you'd expect it to at least predict lottery numbers, not just show you who you were avoiding. Today, most of these products aren't much more than a memory. Very few of them have ever survived the trash dump. But if you happen to have some of these and you're willing to sell them, then perhaps you can make a pretty penny on eBay. Can you think of any other failures from the 1970s that we missed? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing about the gadgets and gizmos that time forgot. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If this trip down memory lane made you chuckle, or even shake your head in disbelief, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe for more dives into the fascinating and sometimes funny history of things.